Executive Director Radu, would you please read the roll?
Regent Baling.
Present.
Regent Bradley. Regent Delgado.
Present.
Regent Evers. Regent Farrell. There she is. Regent Greavy. Regent Hall. Regent Hersey.
Here.
Regent Higgins. Regent Langness. Regent Menydeep. Regent Milner.
Here.
Regent Mueller. Regent Pearson.
Here.
Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Tyler.
Here.
Regent Vasquez. Regent Whitburn.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Today is September 11th. There are a few dates in our history where we look back and we think, where were we at that particular date? December 7th, November 22nd, and September 11th. Before we begin today, I think it's appropriate we recognize that date. It's been 14 years since the day our nation suffered a tremendous loss and a tremendous tragedy. However, the events of that day brought us together as a nation and a people. And it's in that spirit and in the memory of those we lost, and with deep appreciation for those who have sacrificed so much since September 11, 2001, that I ask you to join us this morning in observing a moment of silence. Thank you. The minutes of the June and July 2015 Board of Regents meeting have been provided. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The reports of the Hospital Authority Board, the Higher Education Aids Board, and the Wisconsin Technical College System Board have been provided. Are there any comments or questions about these reports? Hearing none, we'll move on. I'd like to express our appreciation to Chancellor Copper and the entire UW-Whitewater community for their very generous hospitality over the past day or two. I'm sure you all had an opportunity to see some of the business signs coming in from community businesses as we entered into Whitewater. I know it's with equal parts of excitement and trepidation that a campus learns our show is coming to town. But I can't overstate how much we enjoy this opportunity to see and hear firsthand the unique offerings of every campus within our great system. Thank you very much to the community of UW-Whitewater. Moving on. As a member of the Strategic Planning Steering Committee, I want to say a few words about the listening sessions that will continue in the upcoming weeks. I would like to really emphasize how important it is for all of us as board members to actively support this process. I'm encouraging you to choose one or two, or if you want to really have a chance to get engaged, 3 of these meetings and join them and listen to the comments that are coming in from community members. I know we had several regents as well as a former board members in attendance at the first listening session last week at UW-La Crosse. I want to thank Regent Delgado, Regent Higgins, and Regent Menydeep. Thank you very much for joining us that day. The next session will be held Tuesday, September 15th at UW Green Bay. I'm looking forward to participating in that session and hope to see some of you there. Just a reminder that following today's meeting, UW-Whitewater will host the investiture of its new chancellor, Beverly Copper. It's a wonderful opportunity to celebrate a campus as it looks to the future, and I encourage you to attend. While the formal ceremony doesn't start until 1:30, participants in the processional are asked to go to the lobby of the Young Auditorium by 1 p.m. Golf carts will be located just outside the south entrance of University Center if you'd like a ride. Otherwise, the auditorium is just a short walk away. And on a related note, there's going to be more celebrating next week at UW-Oshkosh, where the campus will be marking the inauguration of Chancellor Andy Levitt. Regents, of course, are all invited to attend, and I'm looking forward to going up there myself. There will be a breakfast in the morning, a lunch in the afternoon, a lecture, and that's all before the investiture, and then afterwards there will be a Southern barbecue. Speaking of connections, since the start of the year, I've had the great pleasure of visiting several of our campuses as well as a number of our technical schools and colleges, and it's been in the company of Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Clayfish. In addition to seeing the unique offerings that Wisconsin's centers of higher education offer, these visits have also provided a great opportunity to see how these institutions work together, how our UW system and the Wisconsin Technical College system collaborate on partnerships, opportunities, and cooperative programs. Most recently, in mid-July, we toured Upham Woods, UW Extension's Outdoor Learning Center, located just north of Wisconsin Dells. On the same trip, we also had a personalized tour at the Mid-State Technical College and the UW-Stevens Point, where we got a close look at the paper processing and aquaponics facilities. The previous trips that I've had an opportunity to take with the Lieutenant Governor have brought us to UW-Richland Center, UW-Platteville, UW-Fond du Lac, UW-Oshkosh, as well as Southwest Technical College, Fox Valley Technical College. At all of these venues, we discussed regional development and how our institutions of higher education can do an even better job of meeting the employment needs of the state and helping our students find successful, productive, and fulfilling careers. Now, I'd like to move on and update you on some of our UW System Task Force. In March, President Falbo called for the appointment of 2 separate task forces to recommend new Board of Regent policies on shared governance and tenure. As you will recall, this was prompted by legislative proposals to move shared governance and tenure from state statute. First, the Task Force on Shared Governance. In the end, while some of the language regarding this important practice and principle has been modified, shared governance remains in statute and continues to prescribe the responsibilities of chancellors, faculty, academic staff, and students. In other words, the primary reason for creating the task force no longer exists. As a result, we have decided that convening this task force was not necessary. You may remember that under the old provisions of the statute, shared governance, as it was practiced, varied from campus to campus. Under the provisions of the new statute, shared governance will also vary from campus to campus. We have larger campuses and smaller campuses. The operation of shared governance varies at these campuses. That said, we recognize the way shared governance is practiced and that it may vary, as I said, from institution to institution, reflecting each functional needs or cultural norms on those particular campuses. If we uncover any issues that merit a closer look at the system level, we can always revisit or recharge the task force. I would very much like to thank Regent Whitburn for his willingness to share the group, to chair the group, and his watchful eye on the language changes throughout this process. Thank you, Regent Whitburn. Next, the Tenure Task Force. Vice President Bailing is chair of this group, which had its first meeting in late August. He's going to provide a brief report of what's been done so far. Regent Bailing.
Thank you, President Milner. Let me first begin by stating my appreciation for everyone serving on the task force. They've already spent a lot of time traveling and participating in this important process. The tenure task force held our first meeting on August 20th, and after Board President Milner and President Cross opened with remarks, we got right to work. Additionally, Regent Whitburn joined as well that day as a bystander to watch the process, as tenure also ties in with shared governments in some elements. As part of that day, after we got into work, General Counsel Tom Stafford and his team provided us with an overview of the changes, the current status of state statutes, administrative code, and board policies regarding tenure. Tom and his staff then shared examples of how tenure policies are managed in other states by both systems and institutions, including Big Ten schools Maryland, Penn State, and Michigan. As a side note, I would just add that General Counsel Stafford was excellent in his presentations. I think the question and answers lasted for about 90 minutes, and he truly helped answer a lot of the tough and good questions that were raised and provided a lot of historical information as well. The task force followed that with a good conversation about the value of tenure and helped set the table for further discussions about how the board should approach this issue going forward. The next step in the process is for us to meet on September 17th, next week, to discuss the major challenges and issues we've been asked to address, and also to begin the important work of formulating recommendations so that the task force can forward those to the full board for their review as part of a new tenure policy. It's our goal to have this project completed, hopefully within 4 meetings, but perhaps 5 meetings, and we're working very hard to try to get that done, hopefully by the end of the year. So that's my report, and thank you, President Milner.
Thank you, Regent Bailing, and also thank you very much for agreeing to chair this task force. Last but certainly not least, the UW System Tuition Setting Policy Task Force was named in July and will be chaired by Regent Higgins. This task force is being asked to recommend board policy language on tuition that will incorporate a rational formula or process for setting tuition. In making its recommendations, the task force will be encouraged to analyze current Board of Regents and UW System administration policies on tuition, review other institutions and other systems policies, analyze peer groups, tuition rates, review costs, review relevant literature and pricing models, and consider appropriate updates and modifications to existing policy. All this will be done taking into account both the current and future needs of the UW system. The first meeting of this task force is scheduled for October 15th. Thank you very much, Regent Higgins. Thank you very much for agreeing to chair this, Regent Higgins. Now, moving on to a current issue. As you know, we added time to the agenda today to discuss a resolution regarding AB 305. Earlier this week, the bill was amended and passed by the Assembly Committee on Criminal Justice and now awaits further action in the State Assembly. Certainly the subject matter surrounding AB 305 is an emotional and personal issue for the public, for legislators, and for members of this board. Any action or discussion we take related to this bill must be respectful of that fact. While we were disappointed the bill moved forward at the committee without an amendment addressing the life-saving, nationally recognized research occurring at UW-Madison, the discussion both at the committee and throughout the Capitol leads us to believe the bill will see significant changes during the legislative process. As of right now, there is no Senate companion bill introduced, And we know there will be serious discussions taking place that will guide the direction of this bill before it becomes law. With that in mind, and after consulting with President Cross, Chancellor Blank, and a number of Regent colleagues, I believe the board passing a resolution of any kind at this time would only limit our ability to influence this process as it evolves, particularly because the Senate has not yet taken their first formal steps in this process. Board action would be untimely. So, in recognition of this fluid and evolving situation, I believe that instead of opposing AB 305 in a resolution today, we should encourage efforts to review our ethical standards to confirm that they are in fact the highest standards, ethical standards and the most stringent processes in the country for the acquisition and use of fetal body parts. These standards and these processes should address the illegal sale of fetal body tissues for profit, but also ensure that the critical research on UW-Madison campus continues under the highest ethical standards. This is an opportunity for the University of Wisconsin system, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the state of Wisconsin to demonstrate once again its historic position, both in ethical leadership and its important leadership in the search for the health of humankind. As the legislative process develops, UW System and UW-Madison will continue to closely monitor the situation, and this board will be in a position to respond through our bill review process, or if necessary, and I want you to be aware of this, if necessary, an emergency meeting to take a position on this important matter. This approach will allow us to make a more informed and more impactful decision on this bill. So with this in mind, I'm going to open this up for discussion with the Board of Regents. Later in our discussion, I'm going to ask Chancellor Blank to weigh in on implications to Madison for this particular bill. Do I have any comments to begin? Regent Bailey?
Thank you, President Milner. As you've mentioned, I think taking action today, it is premature. And I say that based on discussions that our staff has had, thanks, Jay, both in and out of the Capitol, that also lead us to that conclusion. I think we'd be better off as a body for the moment to direct our professional staff, both at the system and at UW-Madison, to monitor this process, watch how it develops, and provide guidance and direction moving forward. As a former Capitol staffer, I know that over times in the past couple of years, we've sometimes had very rocky relationships with the legislature. I think we're taking excellent steps to start to repair that relationship. Yesterday, Senator Noss attended the Ready Committee. I saw that as an excellent sign. Additionally, today, we'll adopt a new set of accountability metrics that was developed in conjunction with Senator Harsdorf and Representative Murphy, who chair the higher ed committees. I think these are tremendous steps, and I think we want to continue taking those steps. And by simply waiting today and having our staff, giving them time to do a little more work, I think it is another good step in that direction. I do think passing a resolution could impede those ongoing discussions, and perhaps if we wait, we'll have a better opportunity to give guidance in a meaningful and, more importantly, timely process. This by no means is a closing of the issue. As President Milner said, we could do a special meeting or go through the passive review process like we typically do with legislative bills going through after they've gone through the process for some time. With this in mind, I think it's important for us to wait at the moment, in order to be successful and send the right message at the right time. Thank you.
I would ask my colleagues to speak into the microphone. Our technician has asked that the acoustics here are fine and everyone can hear us. We speak forcefully, but we want to be able to have people that are watching us hear what we have to say. Let's have any weigh-in from our colleagues. Regent Delgado?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. This is the year for somewhat controversial events coming to the university. Am I turning it on or off? Leave it alone. I would like to tell you about an expectation that I would like to set from the board level, and you can agree or not agree, but I'll give you for my opinion. The first thing is that any debate that we have in any area should be respectful. I have read some comments about how ill-intended the proponents of this bill are. Well, I have to tell you that I investigated. I happen to know Assemblyman Jack, like many of you do, and I have known him for 2-3 years. I've talked to him. One, he is extremely well-intended. He loves his university. He's a graduate. He actually wanted to be a medical researcher. And he's very serious about what he's doing and very open to the reason. But he takes it very, 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 as you can imagine, he has an obligation to take it very seriously, and he does. He's very willing to and open to reasoned debate, but to imply that he is ill-intended as a university, I would say it would be a disservice to the debate and would be below what we can do in order to add some light. The other item which I would like to press, and this is much more difficult because what we are seeing is a tendency in our debate for exaggeration. I'll be very plain. In the discussions that we had about tenure, the discussions that we had about governance and the budget, I have been disappointed by the level of exaggeration about the impact of different events on this university. Nothing of what has happened, in my mind, will destroy this university unless we're stupid. And we don't intend to be stupid. This university system has talent stacked up so high and so committed that I do not think that we are going to see this university fail for any difficulty that comes our way. We have the means to overcome it. I think we create a very bad intent for the university when we in fact give the impression that the sky is falling. We also give a bad impression of the ability of our own staff, our own people, to handle almost anything that comes our way. So from my perspective, 2 things I request is respect in the debate, understand that others have a right and an obligation to weigh in, that they do not mean poorly. And the second is, let's give the most clear, articulate, measured expression of our opinion, our impacts, and where we are guessing, let's say we're guessing. Because exaggeration takes away from the respect this university serves. And I would like to be on record on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Regent Langus.
Thank you, Regent President Milner. I just wanted to say that, as with all issues and questions that affect Wisconsin, I think it's vital for the system and citizens of this great state to collaborate with the legislation and develop the best possible solution to what's going on.
Thank you. Regent Hall.
And I would, am I on? Oh, okay. So what I would encourage is that as we move forward, that we're not compromising the research that we know UW-Madison does, while at the same time, with such a sensitive issue, that we are adhering to all ethical standards. I think that is the balance that we're working with as a Board of Regents and in maintaining who we are as a UW system in research.
Thank you. Yes, Regent Menedez.
President Miller, thank you. I just, as a housekeeping matter, who is going to determine when it's an appropriate time for this board to convene either in an emergency meeting or respond with a resolution? What's the timing of it? Who's going to make that determination? because as everyone knows, we're not all meeting every day and seeing each other. So I'd kind of like to have some guidance from you as to who's going to make the decision. Is it a team effort? Who's going to keep us advised? Can you tell us as we go along through the process what's going on and what your feelings are about when it's appropriate, so that we know?
Yes, we're going to be monitoring this daily. We have to see what happens with the Capitol. We're working with both UW-Madison and with our staff, and we will keep you all informed about all that's happening. And frankly, you have the ability as regents to weigh in on the appropriateness of either a special meeting as well.
Thank you.
Good question. Yes, Regent Farrell.
I guess in reaction to Regent Manydeeds, I share some of your concern about who's going to determine when. We regularly, or when it's needed, we get our reviews from the Washington lobbyist. We've had 1 or 2 passive review requests from Jim Viller and his team. There already is a plan being discussed, I am sure, in the Senate. I don't know that, but we know how the 2 teams have been working to some extent. We also know, I would remind us that the Senate often steps ahead of the Assembly when the Assembly begins moving in 2 directions at once and they have to pull themselves back together. The Senate moves forward. My concern, sharing your concern, is how fast could this move? There isn't a floor period scheduled for, well, Jim would have to tell me if it's either later this month or I think it's in October, that it could actually go to the floor for action. But I would want the staff that's working for us, who is going to help us make any determination of timeliness or substance or who to talk to, because somebody's offering an amendment or I don't know who's offering, I think I know who's authoring the Senate bill or would, but that probably isn't cast in stone yet. So I agree, we've got to be timely about this, and I would expect Jim to keep us informed through you and through the usual way we act. And I don't think it can be just the executive committee on this. It's got to be a full board.
I agree. Regent Pruitt?
I certainly defer to leadership, and because we have very good leadership, about the timing of when this board would and should be heard. I think that is appropriate to do. But on the substance of this, I just want to make clear where I am and leave little doubt about that. I think we have a number of responsibilities as regents, and probably none is more important than to be defenders of and protectors of both academic freedom and the research mission of this university when it is threatened. And with due respect to my colleague Regent Delgado, who I think your words were in many senses wise, I do think this is an issue of profound importance, with potentially very significant and probably not easily overstated implications for this university. And this has never been either an issue of pro-life or pro-choice or even Republican or Democrat. As Regent Whitburn could attest far better than I, there was nobody who was a stronger and more heroic defender of Jamie Thompson and the stem cell research that was being done at the University of Wisconsin-Madison 17 years ago than Governor Tommy Thompson. And I think this board has a special and important responsibility to sort of preserve and defend that tradition. Many of us have, around this table and in this room, have lost a loved one to disease or to something to a cause that these researchers every day are trying to find a cure for. And whether that cure comes a year from now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now, I think it's our sort of fiduciary responsibility as regents to be heard at some point, both individually and I would hope collectively.
Thank you. And I would remind all of us that this is an opportunity to be heard at this meeting. The resolution is an action, but we're having a discussion now, and this is an opportunity to be heard. And I think this is a good time to interrupt our discussion. I want you to think about what each one of you, what else you would like to be heard about this. And I'd like to invite Chancellor Blank to make a few comments. Chancellor Blank?
Thank you, Regent Milner. I'll sit here so I can look all of you in the face rather than standing over in that far corner of the room there. I appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate the concern about the rapidly changing political environment on this issue. I want to make just 3 quick points. One on the importance of the work that is done involving fetal tissue and fetal cell lines. The second on the extensive regulation of our use of this type of material, and thirdly on the potential effects for the University of Wisconsin-Madison in particular of this legislation. So the importance of the work, and several people have spoken to this already. Fetal tissue, both including cell lines and cells, as well as larger tissue collections, is directly and quite uniquely involved in contributing to the fight against a host of diseases and conditions, including things like cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, to name just a few. It's also quite crucial for scientists who are studying certain aspects of the human body, like the human immune system, and want to do that studies in ways that mimic and model what would happen in the human body, but of course not using human beings in that process. Similarly, in terms of drug tests and other treatments, prior to their use in human patients, this work using fetal tissue is often done in a way that prepares certain types of drugs to be far better for further along before it goes into a testing phase. The use of fetal tissue is very highly regulated by the federal government. There are all sorts of conditions that have to be met by the ways in which this tissue is collected and put into tissue banks, and the ways in which we receive it as well. We are very adamant at the University of Wisconsin about following those regulations, following those laws, and in fact we go beyond the requirements in federal law and regulation, conducting additional internal oversight of the research that we do on campus involving fetal tissue. And I don't know that anyone on campus has any difficulties with the legislature reiterating the importance of those regulations and the importance of dealing ethically with this type of treatment, this type of tissue, in the way that one also is concerned about dealing ethically with cadavers at the other end of life, right? And finally, let me say a word about the University of Wisconsin and its impact. And again, with all due respect, Regent Delgado, this is one where I think the potential impacts on our university are greater than those of anything that we have discussed around budget cuts. And those are things we can work through and argue about. But biomedical research on our campus has long been an area of strength. And it is particularly the scope of biomedical research between the College of Agriculture, the College of Veterinary Medicine, the School of Medicine and Public Health, our pharmacy school, our nursing school, all of our biological research inside the College of Liberal Arts. And it's the interdisciplinary work that truly characterizes the strength and the reputation of the University of Wisconsin. We would lose some of our top scientists who are using fetal tissue and would have to leave the state if they were going to continue their research. But to view this as simply a loss of that number of researchers, I think misstates and understates the impact of this on the university. We attract a large number of people because of the breadth and scope of our research, who come here because they want to be part of those teams. And if a significant component of those teams disappear from the university, others will choose not to be here as well. I cannot imagine our ability to recruit young, promising biomedical researchers or promising students to come to Wisconsin if there's a whole area of research that simply cannot be done there, but which could be done in Wisconsin, or it could be done in Illinois, or in Michigan, or in California, or New York. They simply will choose not to come here. And the impact that that would have on our reputation in the sciences, our ability to recruit good students into STEM type work would be very strong, and it would be particularly devastating, in my opinion, to the School of Medicine and Public Health, to places like the Weissman Center, to places like the Margaret Institute for Research, and other closely affiliated places around campus. So I simply want to encourage you, as you're following what happens on this legislation, to continue to be concerned about the potential impact on campus. Labeling our faculty as felons for doing research that is state-of-the-art at any major medical school is not the right way to promote the University of Wisconsin and to build our strength in the sciences.
Thank you. Regent Whitburn.
As the Chancellor has pointed out, this has been a center of genuine excellence for us. And as Chancellor Pruitt has pointed out, for a very significant period of time. I have been following this legislation carefully with 3 hats on. First hat, that of a regent. Second, as a father and as a new grandfather, interested in appropriate enhancements of medical science. And third, as a person who has been the senior public health official in 2 states. The legislation, in my view, in its current form, is an overreach. It's bad for the university. It's bad for Wisconsin. It's bad for our citizens and our future citizens here and elsewhere. As currently drafted, it should not, in my view, be enacted.
Thank you. Regent Evers.
Thank you. And I also refer to the leadership, but I just have to, I'm very uneasy about essentially monitoring legislation. As you know, it's like monitoring making sausage, and we really never know when you're coming to a conclusion. And to me, frankly, as a board member and as a cancer survivor, I think this is more about something's right or something's wrong. And I believe putting our researchers who do significant work to help all of society by limiting what they are ethically bound by already in significant ways with legal problems if they continue to do research. It's a horrible message, and I think it's an important enough issue that we address head on. I understand that we won't, and so I'm accepting of that, but I have to tell you, I don't think it's about legislation. I think it's about determining what is right, and what is in that bill is not right.
Regent Peterson.
Thank you, Regent President Milner. We've heard some very emotional commentary this morning, and it's all well-deserved. You know, as I survey where I think we're coming from as a board, I think there's 3 things that we're trying to achieve. We want to be factual, we want to be respectful, and the additive that I would offer is we want to be informative. I think we have a very big opportunity between now and when the Senate takes action next month to address some of those issues. So from a board member perspective, here's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in learning what other world-class institutions that do research are doing to combat this current issue, and what they think of the particular legislation that we're facing in Wisconsin. They are far better experts at the compliance and ethical obligations that are associated with this than me, but I also consider their opinions to be valid. Second, the big issue here, in my opinion, is regulatory compliance. We have an opportunity to educate the entire citizens of this state on how it's done and whether we are compliant. And rather than injecting our opinions, let's deal with that factually. Third, ethical guidelines. There are stories in the papers of Wisconsin today questioning that. I'd like to know whether or not we're compliant with our ethical guidelines from a factual perspective. And thirdly, as it relates to Regent Whitburn's comments, in this particular legislation, there is a timeline that's been instituted, January 1st of 2015. There was a reason why it was injected, in my opinion, but I don't know that it is a sensible date or time. To me, when you look at legislation that inserts a timeline that's relatively arbitrary, it makes it very difficult from a practical perspective to continue with your operations, your research, your study. So I'd be interested in what that specific statutory timeline does for the research that takes place here at the University of Wisconsin.
Thank you. Regent Mueller.
Thank you, Madam President. You mentioned in your opening remarks that this is an emotional and personal issue for all of us, and it certainly is for me. In fact, it's very difficult for me to talk about this issue, and I hesitate to do so. But some of you know that I was diagnosed with cancer earlier this year, and I was given a pin shortly after my treatment began that said, "Research cures cancer." And there was a picture of a microscope. And there's no other answer. That is the truth. And I know so much more now than I did a few months ago. I know what it feels like to have 28 radiation treatments in a small part of my body, or the needles and the PICC lines and the ports for chemotherapy. And it hurts me so much to think that children are suffering today, as I did, and adults. And so I can appreciate everything that's been said, but I just encourage my colleagues in the future that we support a resolution strongly that recognizes the importance of research at the university, particularly research involving fetal tissue and fetal cell lines. It's going to make a difference. I don't want people to suffer, frankly, as I did. Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Mendes.
Thank you. I feel compelled to say this after listening to what everybody else has been talking about, which I agree with. But I think that along with listening to and monitoring what's going on, we should also at this time take the opportunity to start reinforcing with everyone in the state the importance of what goes on at the campus, of telling them that we do it ethically, of showing them that the regulations are being followed, of educating everybody in the state about those practices on that campus and about the importance of that research to everybody, not only on that campus, but in this state and in this country and in this world. I think these are the things that we should be doing now immediately, and also preparing after we listen to, in case we need it, the resolution that would support that campus, that research. And I think we have to do that instead of waiting for somebody to do something. We can monitor, but we can also prepare. And I think that's what I'd like us to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Higgins.
Thank you, Regent President Stewart. I want to follow up on what Regent Mendes said by noting that as a one-way advocate for the University of Wisconsin-Madison for over 35 years, this is an issue that has come up time and again. And it's an issue that we have had to address for the people of the state of Wisconsin and for their representatives in the legislature probably once every 4 or 5 years in some fashion or other. And that's as it should be. This type of research using fetal tissue is fraught with moral and personal and scientific weight. And it is incumbent upon us to continually monitor the standards that we use to engage in that research and to convince the people of the state of Wisconsin and the legislators who represent them that we are adhering to the highest possible standards, which, I point out, we have shown time and time again in the past. And I expect that that's going to prove to be the case at this go-around, but it's an obligation that we shouldn't take lightly or shirk by rolling our eyes and say, oh, that's come up again. And I don't believe we're doing that. But it's an opportunity, once again, for us to show that the University of Wisconsin meets the standards set by the people of Wisconsin.
I think we're, Regent Greavy.
I'll be very brief. First of all, I appreciate the comments of all of my other fellow board members, and I think they certainly adhere to Regent Delgado's admonition that we'd be respectful in this. I don't want to reiterate things that other people have said. I think there are very many wise comments. This is a difficult decision for a number of reasons, including the fact that it is fraught with matters of personal conscience for everybody around the table and for everybody involved, no matter what your view on this topic may be. I think for those of us sitting here, though, it's important that we remember that our role as on the Board of Regents is to support the University of Wisconsin system and to make sure that we're looking out for that system's best interests and for the state of Wisconsin's best interest and for the interest of the citizens. And I think it's entirely possible for people to square their personal consciences with the decision to support what the university has been doing, but to ensure that the university continues to do it in the most ethical manner possible.
Thank you. Well said. I think we're at an end. I want to remind all of you that this has to do with that this discussion has the resolution is a firm action that may happen in the future. This gave us an opportunity to speak to this issue. I'm going to step back from my role as chair. Typically, I do not weigh in as a role as a chair, but this is an opportunity for each one of us to be heard, and I would appreciate the opportunity. This bill is about the ethical procurement of fetal tissue. That is a good position. This bill should not compromise the ethical and important research that's being done at our institutions. Research that has moved mankind in the past and will move mankind in the future. We will not only monitor, we will stay closely involved with what's happening at the Capitol. We will keep you all involved, and please be prepared if it's necessary for us to call a special meeting. Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments, and we will move on. President Cross?
Before I begin my remarks, I personally want to express to each of you my admiration for the respectful, somber, serious approach you've taken to this. That says a lot to all of us, regardless of what your position is on this. I think it's also impressive that you acknowledge the way we're attempting to be engaged with legislators and respecting all of them, as you suggested, Regent Delgado. And I think that's one of the reasons we're attempting to understand better where they are, where we can be, how we can find a way to do this, while defending the university's ethical, very ethical, perhaps the most ethical in the country approach to this process. But making sure we do that And I think that was Regent Peterson's admonition as well as Regent Greeby. That's really, really important. So I appreciate that very much, and I just wanted to express that. Moving on. It seems awfully quiet in here, and I think that's really great, but now it's time to be a little more boisterous as we move to a different subject. We're officially off and running with the strategic planning listening sessions. We kicked off our series of strategic planning listening sessions at UW-La Crosse. Let me say, if the health and wellness and general sessions we hosted are any indication, our strategic plan is going to benefit from a wealth of quality ideas and input from stakeholders throughout Wisconsin. The conversation around the tables at UW-La Crosse, they were fantastic. Participants shared their thoughts and visions, providing us with the kind of feedback we need to help make our plan an effective and long-lasting plan. No one held back. In many cases, they were very broad. That will be refined, and we'll have further focused engagements. They offered praise, criticism, and guidance. It's exactly what we want from these folks. We'll continue these next week in Green Bay and visit 7 other campuses. There are 14 of these scheduled, perhaps more later on. So we encourage you to attend if possible. Just let us know that you're coming. I should also add that each of the campuses will hold internal sessions and or feedback processes. These are principally external as we attempt to secure input from those stakeholders. Secondly, I enjoyed UW Green Bay's 50th anniversary along with Regent Higgins and Regent Milner. If I missed someone else there, it's because I was eating too much breakfast. But it was wonderful, Gary, Chancellor Miller. It was a great celebration and very nicely done. The Wisconsin Technology Council principles that they completed the other day and announced, I want to thank them publicly for their efforts. They articulated the importance of higher education in the future, to the future of the state's economy. And I want to just pick off their 5 fundamentals: recognizing fundamental differences between UW's doctoral granting campuses and the systems for your institutions, attracting and retaining the best faculty and researchers at all of our institutions, keeping our universities affordable and accessible for all residents, improving the transfer of knowledge and ideas into a prosperous Wisconsin economy, being aware of the competitive world around us. I'd like to publicly thank the Wisconsin Technology Council for emphasizing these priorities and these principles, and we appreciate that very much. Some legislative conversations. I want you to know that we have been in constant conversations with legislators regarding the fetal tissue bill, AB 305. Just been a constant dialogue. And I think Regent Manny Deed's admonition that how will we know what kind of timing, I think that's really important, and we have to be sensitive to that. It is a team approach to trying to understand, okay, when can we be most effective? How can we helpfully develop any kind of appropriate alternative language? The budget process is finally behind us. However, we're circling back with legislators and addressing some issues and opportunities that we think are important. There are pieces that we clearly had support for that we didn't get in the budget, and we're circling back on those. We're finding some movement on the possible legislation that will enable Wisconsin to enter into a federally recognized Midwestern State Authorization Reciprocity Program. We call that MSARA. This legislation will help make credit transfers between states more efficient and improve our partnerships across state borders. We're working with WACU, the private colleges, and the Wisconsin Technical College System on this legislation, and we expect it to be introduced by Senator Horsdorf rather soon. I might also add that without this capability, it hinders our clinical assignments, particularly across state borders. So we're finding out there are other constraints that exist without this legislation. We're also examining what might be done with the capital side of the budget and our ability to construct facilities and procurement as well. And there seems to be some receptivity there to revisiting that. There is some interest from legislators on both of those, and so several good conversations are going on. And later this morning, we'll be discussing the new accountability metrics, and I really won't talk much of about those. You saw the launch of the new dashboard yesterday. I think this, and as Regent Peterson mentioned yesterday, this is a new level of transparency for us that I think is really important, and it will be helpful if we help a number of other folks understand it. We'll be presenting those later this month to both chairs of the higher ed committees. On the federal relations front, I'd like to call your attention to a new biweekly blog. It's not mine. That was recently launched by the UW Systems Office of Federal Relations. It's called the Washington View blog. It's published every other Friday and focuses on federal education news as it relates to the UW system. Of particular interest at this point is the federal Perkins loan program. That's a critically important piece to us. It will expire on September 30th unless Congress acts to reauthorize or extend it. The system, at about 16,000 of our students, were awarded nearly $29 million in Perkins loans in 2013-14. That's a significant reduction in student aid if that does not continue. An update on the UW system reorganization, and when I say system, I'm talking about my office, my operations at the top. We shared those details in a broad way with you the other day, and I want you to know this is an evolutionary process that in the end will result in some significant restructuring and streamlining of our operations. Right now, we project we'll have 36 net fewer positions within systems. That's between 10 and 12% reduction in staffing at our level at the top. We will achieve this and have achieved it through attrition. We've had a significant number of employees leave, and we haven't filled or we've changed those positions, and the 36 is a net number. Other things we're doing is as we initiate the complete analysis of IT, budgeting, HR, and procurement in a more in-depth process, we believe that there will be savings there as well, whether it's through consolidation or centralization or distribution of responsibilities. We don't know yet. We're hoping that will be completed sometime in November or December, but we may be a bit optimistic on it. That's a complicated process. Ultimately, we're trying to focus more on outputs rather than inputs. Rather than telling campuses how to do something, our goal is to say these are the output expectations and agree with them on that and focus on the outputs. The Green Ribbon Award presentations, the U.S. Department of Education presents these each year, recognizing educational institutions that demonstrate outstanding progress in 3 key areas: reducing environmental impact and costs, improving the health and wellness of students and staff, and providing effective sustainability education. This year, for the first time, the DOE Awards are recognizing top performers in higher ed. In the past, it's only been in the K-12 ranks. 3 UW institutions were considered for this award: UW Green Bay, UW Oshkosh, and UW Stevens Point. While they were not among the final national honorees, their accomplishments are significant. They're so significant that Governor Walker has issued certificates of commendation, and we're going to present those here today. If I could call on Chancellor Miller, Chancellor Andy Levitt, and Chancellor Bernie Patterson to step forward.
Very flexible.
Now it's time to present our student spotlight. As most of you know, Kevin Riley, my predecessor, enjoyed poetry, as do I, but he was much more eloquent about it than I am. But our focus is on the student spotlight, so this is poetic in another sense. We are going to meet an outstanding UW-Whitewater student and an outstanding UW-Whitewater alumna. As you're about to hear, they have a special bond. Please join me in welcoming Josh Day and Rochelle Day. Would you please come to the microphones right there?
Hi, everybody. Is it on? Yeah. Thank you, President Cross, for this opportunity for my son Josh and I to share our experiences with you and the rest of the board. At the age of 50, I decided to return to college after a challenging 2 years of caring for my terminally ill parents. Returning to school as a non-traditional student was stressful and filled with moments of self-doubt. However, if it were not for the support of my husband, Al, and my children, along with the encouraging atmosphere of UW-Whitewater campus, I would not have completed my educational dream. Coming back at my age wasn't easy, but it was during these difficult times when I met caring faculty who gently but firmly pulled me out of my comfort zone and pushed me into new experiences. Campus faculty had a way of explaining modern technical concepts and methods in ways that I could relate to from my previous work experience. One class that brought me a lot of fear and panic was my applied calculus class. I was convinced that graphing calculators were going to be the death of me. How could I write computer programs and reconfigure hardware, but yet be completely tripped up by graphing calculators? Oh, and please keep in mind that my professor, Dr. Muhammad Ahmadi, looked exactly like Albert Einstein. How in the world am I going to learn calculus from Einstein? So I asked Professor Ahmadi if I could bring my 17-year-old high school son with me to class just to see what college math was like. Wink, wink. With professor's permission, Josh came to one of my classes, and immediately I knew that my math tutor lived under my roof.
This was my first introduction to the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. As a high school student, it was an honor for me to visit Dr. Ahmadi's class. This experience ignited my interest in calculus, allowing me to teach myself while tutoring my mother. Through this and several similar opportunities, I was able to meet professors years before choosing to attend University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. These experiences unveiled my passion and talent for what would become my majors, mathematics and computer science. I wanted to use these skills to better serve the school as a whole, so I turned in an application at the Tutorial Center to become a math tutor and began working in the Math Center soon after. I was also involved with German Club, Chemistry Club, and a new fraternity on campus, Alpha Sigma Phi, as a founding father, which, as of this past summer, has achieved one of the highest national awards.
One experience that really stands out for me was when I was asked by my English professor, Dr. Elena Levy-Navarro, if I wanted to do undergraduate research. I said, sure. What is it? As a computer programmer, English was not one of my strengths. So you could say that Dr. Levy-Navarro was the embodiment of my inability. My research was conducted on a poet-author named Virginia Hamilton Adair. Poetry, a subject I knew nothing about. I was a programmer, for heaven's sake. I don't know a haiku from a nursery rhyme. But after many hours of mentoring by my professor, 2 research trips to California that I paid for, and a year-long exploration of this poet, I was able to present my final work at Inker in Ithaca, New York, and again at UW-Whitewater undergraduate research day.
Where she won the best oral presentation.
Oh.
also continue to develop my relationships with my professors. In particular, Professor Hien Nguyen opened up an opportunity for me to do research with the National Center for Border Security and Immigration Summer Scholars Academy at the University of Texas, El Paso, funded by the Department of Homeland Security. From this experience, I was able to publish a paper and receive 2 awards from separate presentations. Other professors, such as Dr. Powell Felsen and Dr. Kibong Nam, encouraged me into research and independent studies, and were willing and available to take the time to teach me. Through each semester, I pushed myself to be more involved, assuming the position as treasurer of German Club, as head of standards board of Alpha Sigma Phi, and as a student instructor and in-class tutor for several math classes, from the basics to the more advanced topics of calculus and discrete mathematics. Through my studies, I was able to present at one conference and competed on Whitewater's face-off team at 2 other conferences. I was able to further represent my school through the Putnam competition, a national math exam with 12 questions given 6 hours, and each question is worth 10 points. The first time I took the test, I received a 0, which was the median national score. However, I was determined to continually improve my score. I went from a 0 to a 2 the next year, and finally this past year to 12 points. I'm striving to continue this progress in my next and final exam.
Professor Hien Nguyen also had a great impact on my education. And at the lowest point of my experience, she rallied the computer science department around me to encourage me to stay with my program. Since my graduation in August 2012, I was hired at UW-Whitewater and currently work in the Department of Institutional Research and Planning. Go IRP. Our department is responsible for the official numbers for the university. This is also where I develop and support the creation of university dashboards and data visualizations. Here I am able to put my previous work experience and apply the knowledge I received through obtaining my bachelor's degree. Now, I'm looking into graduate programs so that I might also continue to learn and bring new ideas and skills to my job.
Now, as I begin my final year with a 3.85 GPA, I am still a double major in mathematics and computer science with a minor in German, and projected to graduate within my 4 years of college. I remain active in philosophy club and in my fraternity, as well as in the tutorial center. Over this past summer, Professor Nguyen arranged another research internship for me to work with the head of the department, the computer science department, at Illinois Institute of Technology. She further prepares me for graduate school by allowing me to work with her as the lead of a research project that is funded by the United States Navy. UW-Whitewater has opened numerous opportunities for us to build a solid foundation on which we may base our aspirations of self-improvement and our goal of graduate school. We are proud of our school, our education, and each other. We are what's possible with the UW-Whitewater education. Thank you all for your time.
I think it goes without saying that you may be proud of each other, but we are proud of you. Congratulations. Now I'd like to share some news from around the system, and I'll try to be brief and quick. UW Parkside reports that the Milwaukee Bucks president, Peter Fagan, will serve as executive in residence later this month. Congratulations, Chancellor Ford. According to a new study by North Star Consulting, UW-Stevens Point contributes $420 million annually to Wisconsin's economy, up from about $408 million in 2011. Kudos to Chancellor Patterson, Gregg, Summers and the team at Pointer Community. UW-Madison once again has earned very high spots in 2 separate rankings, world's top universities. Just recently, they were moved up from 13th to 11th in UW News and World Report's ranking. The academic ranking of world universities conducted by Shanghai Chiao Tong University ranked UW-Madison 24th for the 2nd straight year. Another prestigious list, the Center for World University Rankings, has ranked UW-Madison 25th worldwide. This is really impressive. This news doesn't come as a surprise to most of us. Certainly, it does and should serve as a powerful reminder of what a jewel we have in our flagship institution, one that we need to protect and promote for many years to come. The exceptional generosity of John and Tasha Morgridge and more than 1,000 other donors will certainly help. In case you missed it, earlier this week, Madison shared the news that Badger alumni and others took on a challenge issued by the Morgridges and have given the university $125 million over the past 7 months, which the Morgridges have agreed to match. The resulting $250 million will be used for named professorships, chairs, and distinguished chairs. It should provide a significant boost to faculty recruitment and retention efforts. To put this in perspective, this means the number of endowed professorships and chairs at Madison should more than double, from around 142 to 300. That is impressive. It's simply phenomenal. Congratulations, Chancellor. UW-Oshkosh has again earned the highest ranking in the state and is ranked 3rd overall in the country on the prestigious Sierra Club Coolest Schools list. I think that has a double meaning in this case. This is the first time Oshkosh has made it into the top 10. Way to go, Chancellor Levitt. The U.S. Department of Education has granted more than $500,000 to UW-Rock County to support the work of its TRIO program. Congratulations to Chancellor Sandeen and to Dean Carmen Wilson. Congratulations. Starting this month, UW-River Falls will be offering its graduate Montessori teacher education program in Appleton. UW-River Falls is the only university in the UW system offering a graduate pathway to earn Montessori credentials and one of only 2 public universities across the country to do so. Kudos to Chancellor Van Galen. Over the summer, philanthropists Sheldon and Marianne Lubar donated $10 million to the UW-Milwaukee Center, the Lubar Center for Entrepreneurship. It should benefit students and companies throughout the region, and I was pleased to join Chancellor Moaning in this celebration along with the Lubars of that donation. Congratulations, Chancellor Moaning. Students from UW Superior's Symphonic Band and Jazz Band traveled to Panama this summer to perform and teach master classes at local schools. UW Superior is also reporting a record number of international students this fall, with 190 students from over 40 countries. Congratulations, Chancellor Walker. Since 2011, an average of 940 students a year have participated in UW Stout's Cooperative Education Program. This program is designed to integrate college studies with work experience. Senior Michael Guzman, for example, spent the summer working and doing research for Fisher AG, a precision spindle company located in Switzerland. Here, congratulations, Chancellor Meyer. UW-La Crosse is #1 in awarding physics degrees among bachelor degree granting programs in the country. #1. UWL granted an average of 31 physics degrees annually between 2011 and 2013. Congratulations, Chancellor Gall, great work. UW-Platteville has been awarded 4 separate applied research WISIS technology advancement grants, totaling about $200,000. Chemist Dr. Brian Berry says these grants will provide students with an invaluable experience. Good work, Dennis and the team from Platteville. UW-Eau Claire reports that its geospatial education initiative is helping students land jobs and internships in a very competitive field. At the same time, employers praise faculty for reaching out to understand current industry needs and adapting their curriculum to better prepare students. Congratulations, Jim Chancellor Smith. The UW Leadership Program, developed and led through UW Extension, has grown from a system-wide program to a national program open to the public and private higher education leaders from around the country. Congratulations, Chancellor Sandini. Finally, we have a story from UW Green Bay, a story of how some quick thinking saved the day and possibly someone's life. Student worker Samantha Bratton was out doing storm cleanup on a remote area of the campus recently with her grounds crew partner. This is a student, remember, her partner being a regular staff member. They were removing a tree that had fallen along a path during a storm when suddenly the tree shifted and pinned the staff member by the neck and upper chest, making it hard for him to breathe. Samantha lifted the tree just enough to offer relief, and then used branches as levers to stabilize the situation. She dialed for help, and 2 other ground crew members arrived and eventually were able to release the trapped man. Emergency responders later said he could have been killed and owed a lot to the young student's quick action. Chancellor Miller recognized Samantha and the other ground crew members at the recent convocation. Well, that includes my report today. Regent President Milner, again, if you'd like more details on each of these stories, I've simply tried to bullet point them. There are so many things happening on our campus that I could spend a couple more hours just articulating them. If you'd like more, go to our webpage and you'll see a complete news summary. Thank you, Regent President.
Thank you. Now, we're going to move on to the report of the actions taken by our committees. First of all, I'd like to call on Regent Minideeds to present a report of the action taken by the Capital Planning and Budget Committee.
Thank you,
Regent
President
Minideeds.
Milner. The Capital Planning and Budget Committee unanimously approved the minutes of the June 4th and July 9th, 2015 committee meetings, along with the following 3 resolutions. Resolution 1.3C, brought by the University of Wisconsin-Madison, seeking authority to construct a $1.6 million GIF-funded veterinary medical clinical skills laboratory renovation. The project will remove insufficient and outdated solar panels, ductwork, and existing roof system to create a new 52-student clinical skills lab, a 96-seat active learning classroom, and enlarged study space. This renovation will address the need for clinical skills laboratory space to teach through the use of prosthetic and functional veterinary mannequin models. Resolution 1.3D was brought by UW-Milwaukee, requesting approval to enter into agreements to support the Peck School of the Arts and student housing as a result of the new leasing authority. You will recall that the 2015 Wisconsin Act 55 gave responsibility to the Board of Regents for all student housing leases already in place as of July 14, 2015, regardless of any subsequent extension, modification, or renewal, and therefore the Board of Regents may renegotiate the terms of existing Department of Administration operating lease agreements as opposed to requesting the DOA enter into a renewed or modified operating lease on behalf of UW-Milwaukee. And finally, Resolution 1.3E, brought by UW System, requesting approval of all 8 agency maintenance and repair projects totaling $16 million. 3 at UW-Madison, 2 at UW-Green Bay, and 1 each at UW-Milwaukee, UW-Stevens Point, and UW-Whitewater. These 8 projects focus on facility maintenance, utility renovation, programmatic space remodeling, health and safety upgrades, and and energy conservation. I would ask that those 3 resolutions be approved by the full board.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Our committee then heard a presentation from UW-Whitewater about building student access, which included a review of the UW-Whitewater Comprehensive Master Plan. The committee discussed strategies for capital projects to address the 2 new authorities of leasing and gift and grant-funded projects that were granted in 2015 Act 55. The discussion also included the importance of renovation of existing facilities in the upcoming capital budget cycle. Vice President Alex Rowe reported on recent actions of the Building Commission at the August meeting. And then finally, we met in closed session to consider personal histories related to the naming of a facility at the UW-Stevens Point campus. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Moving on, I would ask Regent Whitburn to present a report of the action taken by the Audit Committee.
You will recall the integration of the internal audit staff from across the system into the Chief Audit Executive Organization was planned for July 1st. Those actions now have been completed, and the structuring of leadership is now in place. We have several vacancies, which our Chief Audit Executive is now addressing. Madison's top audit position is vacant now as a result of transition there, and Lori is spending 1 day a week on site there leading the Madison team during this recruitment period. At our meeting yesterday, the committee focused on 4 audits where troubling occurrences were apparent. At Stout, a member of the Office of Counseling Staff, over at least a 4-year period, embezzled more than $50,000 in cash. She's been terminated and charges are pending against her. Most of you have seen the clips. At Superior, the athletic department audit disclosed purchasing irregularities and potential conflict of interest issues. At the athletic department audit in River Falls, the audit brought to light the need to tighten cash handling and billing procedures, among other things. The committee spent time around the UWM audit in its physical security and access to facilities used in camps and programs for children. The finding in that audit was unsatisfactory. The rules we have in place system-wide today require national background checks on new hires, 4-year rechecks, and background checks on all staff employed by any vendor coming in touch with children around any and all university-sponsored activities. Of course, we must have zero tolerance for exposing children inappropriately, and we look to our chancellors to see to it. Finally, as you know, we implemented the Waste, Fraud, and Abuse Hotline in May. During the first 90 days, 52 incidents were reported. 10 incidents resulted in a corrective action being taken. Importantly, we have not had instances of fraud or theft, nor have we had instances where formal personnel actions have had to be initiated. That completes my report.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? I would like to compliment the work of Lori Stortz, our internal auditor, and also the work of the Audit Committee. This is, as you know, something we initiated, I believe it was 2 years ago, and clearly it has become an important part of what we're doing as a system. I also want to comment on the issue in UW-Milwaukee. I was part of the Wisconsin Athletic Board, UW-Madison Athletic Board, during the Penn State issue. And the camps for children is something that we have to monitor very closely. So I very much encourage both all of our campuses who are having camps for children to do what's required by Regent policy. Any other discussion? Thank you very much. Moving on. We have the report of actions taken by the Research and Economic Development Committee. I call on Regent Higgins.
Thank you, Regent President Milner. We open the meeting by welcoming Senator Steve Nass, who is Vice Chair of the Senate Committee on Universities and Technical Colleges. Then our host, UW-Whitewater Chancellor Beverly Copper, led a series of brief presentations by Whitewater students, alumni, faculty, and members of the business community who collectively highlighted an impressive array of entrepreneurial and economic development initiatives. Chief among these is the Innovation Center, which opened in 2011 and today is at full capacity with 16 business tenants supporting 110 jobs in the community. The Innovation Center, along with the Launchpad program and several related campus organizations, serve as role models for university business collaboration across the region and beyond. The UW-River Falls Chancellor Dean Van Galen led a panel of faculty members to discuss the importance and benefit of engaging in activities that foster research, economic development, and innovation in ways to both make it easier and to make it more rewarding for faculty members who so engage. Faculty panelists included Dr. Karen Klesick, Biochemistry at UW-River Falls, Dr. Mark McEllistrom, Material Science at UW-Eau Claire, and Professor Dan McGuire, Fine Arts, UW-Whitewater. These faculty members encourage Ready to continue to support classroom initiatives with the Regents Scholar Program and other initiatives that foster research, internships, and business collaborations. These activities reflect high-impact practices that foster confidence, creativity, and student success. To that end, within the next few weeks, we will announce the renewal of the Regents Scholar Grant Competition for 2016 to further recognize and reward this good work by faculty. And finally, David J. Ward, Interim Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs, led the review of UW system accountability metrics assigned to the Ready Committee. As a result of the discussion, the Ready Committee now presents the following resolution for consideration by the full board. That, upon the recommendation of the President of the University of Wisconsin System, approval be granted for the adoption of the following research and economic development measures as required by the 2015-17 biennial budget. First, research and public service funding. Second, STEM and health degrees. And third, alumni residing in Wisconsin. Would you like a second from someone? Thank you.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Higgins. Moving on, I'd ask Regent Whitburn to present a report of the action taken by the Education Committee.
As always, the Education Committee agenda was full. We approved 5 new academic programs, a BA and BS in Neurobiology at Madison, a BS in Agricultural Engineering at River Falls, a BS in Chemical Engineering at Stevens Point, a new Flex Option Master's in Geodesign and GIS Technologies at Stevens Point in collaboration with UW Extension, and a Master's of Healthcare Administration at UWM. The committee is comfortable with these programs, and I would move adoption at this time of Resolutions 11C1, 2, 3, 4, and Resolution 11C5.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The committee had first reading of the proposed change to the UW-Stevens Point mission statement, and the committee approved the recommended UW system accountability metrics required in the recently enacted budget. The educational performance accountability metrics include 4- and 6-year graduation rates, measures pertaining to closing the graduation rate gap between underrepresented minorities and non-underrepresented minority students, and measures pertaining to the number of degrees awarded by degree level. Resolution 11D covers these proposed metrics, and I would move its adoption.
Is there any discussion? Questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Interim Vice President Dave Ward briefed the committee on the status of the recruitment to backfill his position. We expect hiring to be accomplished by year-end with a new Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs in place early in the year. He also updated us on work going on in connection with remedial and developmental education, and also the complete revision of UWS 4, 7, 11, and 17, which, as you know, pertain to discipline. Whitewater's interim provost John Stone's and Whitewater senior Colleen Dwyer's presentation on the engines of integrative learning was appreciated by the committee. They reported on the high-impact educational practices that the campus has been working with and measuring since 2006. They also stressed UW-Whitewater's embrace of the liberal education and America's promise, the LEAP initiative, and its fostering of lifelong learning. Interestingly, they presented data, specific data over time, illustrating correlations between program participation, student employment, and positive academic results, as well as enhanced graduation rates. Finally, the committee heard from Chancellor Sandine and Extension Provost Brower in the first reading of the proposed change to UW Extension's mission statement, under which Extension would be authorized degree-granting authority for select degrees. The majority of the committee members appeared supportive of this proposed mission change, understanding a significant demand for programming in this space. A public hearing on the subject will be the next step. This completes my report.
Thank you, Regent Whitburn. I now call upon Regent Mueller to present a report of the action taken by Business and Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee first heard from Jeff Arnold, who's the Vice Chancellor for Administrative Affairs here at Whitewater, on management and impact of the state budget reductions. He talked about how his institution is dealing with the recent reduction in state support and the impacts that that has had. I think we had a very good discussion about the financial and administrative metrics that are part of the UW System Accountability Report. After some discussion, we approved accountability metrics related to overall financial health, cost per degree, and revenue over expenses. And we also talked about administrative metrics and approved administrative expenditures, average credits to degree, and affordability. The committee also approved two contracts brought by UW-Madison. The first is with Allergen Sales LLC. It's an agreement to evaluate methods for the management of age-related macular degeneration. The services are currently underway, and we may receive up to $10.5 million for this research. It's being provided by the UW School of Medicine and Public Health. And the second contract is with Takeda Vaccines Incorporated. That company is working on 2 independent dengue fever vaccines, and there will be a study with non-human primates through the Wisconsin National Primate Research Center, and we're expecting about $1.1 million for this work. Vice President David Miller gave the committee an update on 3 large IT projects. These reports are given to us and then subsequently sent to the legislature who are interested in large IT projects throughout state government. He talked about 3, a UW Colleges and Extension Campus Network Infrastructure Project, UW-Milwaukee's replacement of its primary storage infrastructure, and UW-Milwaukee's upgrades to its Wi-Fi wireless network. And I'm delighted to report on David's behalf that all 3 were reported to be on time and on budget. We received a high-level summary report on budget to actual revenues and expenditures now that the fiscal year has ended, and showed that actual expenditures were slightly below what was budgeted and revenues were slightly above what was budgeted. Very close to budgeted levels, but as you know, even a slight shift with a budget of our size results in, additional revenue that we have at the end of the fiscal year, and that will be reported in the annual financial report that comes out on or about October 15th. And finally, we heard a summary of gift grant and contract awards. Another good part of the committee total awards for the period are up compared to the same period last year, although federal awards have declined. And then we always close with a report from Vice President David Miller on areas of interest to the committee, including procurement and IT and HR, and the new UW budget system project, and you'll hear more about that later in the months to come, so stay tuned with that. We spend a lot of time, as I tell you, every month on back office functions, but I think that's so important because every dollar that's wisely spent that can be redirected to our students and faculty are just so important. So with that, Madam President, on behalf of the Business and Finance Committee, I move adoption of Resolution 12C, which are the accountability metrics that came through our committee, 12D, the contractual agreement with Allergen Sales, and 12E, the contractual agreement with Takeda Vaccines Incorporated.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Thank you. Moving on. As President Cross mentioned in his report, we're discussing new accountability metrics this morning. These metrics were divided among the Education, Business and Finance, and Ready committees for their review. Now, Interim Vice President Ward is going to provide an overview for the full board, and then we'll have a vote to authorize transmittal of the new metrics to the legislature. Vice President Ward?
Thank you. You have before you a summary of the metrics that were developed in response to the requirements of the 2015-17 biennial budget. The respective committees reviewed these, each of these metrics. So just to review very briefly, under financial management, the metric for overall financial health is the composite financial index. For the cost per degree, it's educational and related expenditures divided by the number of degrees awarded. Revenue and expenses, its measures including that include the tuition margin ratio and tuition fund balances. Under administrative management, the first is administrative expenditures, the ratio of administrative expenditures to total operating expenditures. The second is average credits to degree, which is the average credits attempted by bachelor degree recipient. And finally, affordability, which is the published tuition fees as a percentage of median Wisconsin family income. That Wisconsin item is not in that summary that you see there, but it's measured against Wisconsin median family income. Under educational performance, some fairly standard metrics, the graduation rates, the 4- and 6-year graduation rates. Under equity gap, measuring those rates, 4- and 6-year graduation rates for underrepresented minority students and Pell Grant recipients. And finally, degrees awarded, which is the total number of degrees awarded by degree level, which just parenthetically was about 36,000 in the last year. Finally, under research and economic development, the first measure is going to be research and public service funding. You just heard a report this morning on research funding. The second is STEM and health degrees as a percentage of all degrees conferred by level. The third is alumni residing in the state. Now, your resolution has at the very bottom of it a sentence that says, further, the system president is authorized to make adjustments to the specific measures within the categories in consultation with the chairs of the legislative committees. To two of the committees yesterday, I used the phrase, "it isn't soup yet," which is a phrase my former president boss, Catherine Lyle, used all the time. So accountability metrics are going to evolve in discussion with the two chairs, and what this authorizes the president to do is to allow him to look at some of these other measures the legislature is suggesting and substitute some of those. I would say from discussions I've been in, 80 to 90% of the existing measures you see in front of you are going to be the measures, but there are a couple of areas where there's some discussion. With that, that's my summary. I'd be glad to answer any questions. This is, by the way, is your third and final dose of accountability in this set of meetings.
Question, Regent Ebert.
Thank you. And I understand this is a great job, especially considering a horrendously tight timeline. But going forward, when the soup is done and consumed and going forward over the next couple of years, can you explain how faculty will be involved in the process and ongoing evaluation of these accountability measures?
Well, I think that in terms of faculty knowing about the measures, we need to roll this out to the faculty as we need to roll it out to the public. In general, as you know, in the presentation yesterday, and everybody remembered, I think, that this goes live at noon. Yeah, so that lesson stuck. They all passed that. But I think it will also involve, faculty will certainly look at this as to how their performance is contributing to this. I mean, we have consistently improving 4- and 6-year graduation rates. That's because the faculty is really doing its work. Likewise, you'll find some of the other measures directly attributable to faculty work. I'd also say it's important to inform academic staff. They're a key component in making these metrics better as we go forward. Does that answer your question?
I would like to entertain a motion for Resolution Roman numeral 2.9.
So moved. Second.
All right. Any more discussion? I just have a question. At noon, is there going to be such active interest that the server will crash?
We'll find out.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. As you know, the state budget included significant cuts in funding for the UW system. All of our campuses are and will be impacted, and our chancellors, their teams, and their respective campus communities have been assessing alternatives and making plans for how to best manage the new reality that they face. At the UW colleges, it was decided after extensive internal and external review to propose a reorganization of the campus's administrative structure. To provide us with an overview of the UW campus's restructuring plan, I'm going to call on Chancellor Kathy Sandeen. Chancellor Sandeen?
Thank you, Regent President. And joining me here is Vice Chancellor Wildeck, who has been very involved in this whole reorganization. We're waiting for our visuals to come up real quickly, and if it doesn't happen quickly, we'll just launch right ahead. Well, maybe I'll just get started. And as you know, the UW colleges have been going through a pretty radical reorganization. We have been trying diligently to keep our board informed of that without overloading you with too much information. So we've been forwarding to you major communications that have gone out to our own staff and to the press along the way. So I think you have some idea of what has been going on, but we really welcome the opportunity to give you a little bit more detail. So I'd just like to start with a couple of thoughts. First, the issue of change. I think this is so important for all of us as leaders to remember. When we're going through major change, it does not mean that what we were doing in the past is wrong. What we were doing in the past was perfectly correct for the time. It's just when we are confronted with external forces and changes, it's our responsibility to take those seriously. And in our case, these are major effects on our budget that are requiring us to change. And then I draw your attention to this character. It's a Chinese character for crisis. And it's made up of two characters, actually. The one on the left is the character for danger, and the one on the right is the character for opportunity. And as we go through the change that we're confronting in the UW colleges, this has been somewhat of our metaphor and our theme. Next slide, please. So here's the danger part of our crisis. This is the amount of the cut that we ended up with at the UW colleges. And I will say at the beginning of the governor's proposed budget cut and that 6 months of our advocacy as we went through the process and the final budget, we started out with a proposed cut in the range of about $6.5 million. And during our advocacy, thank you, and also thank you to the Board of Regents and the allocation of the cut to the various campuses, we were able to reduce the amount of our cut to $5.6 million. However, within the UW colleges, this is still very significant. We are a highly frugal organization, as you know. With average tuition and fees annually per student of $5,100, we are the lowest in the state of Wisconsin. Our faculty are highly productive. If we look at our average instructional costs per student per year, we are also the lowest in the state of Wisconsin. So this is a significant cut for us, and the cut comes on the heels of additional cuts prior to this year and even before that. And so this led to some pretty serious analysis of how the UW colleges can handle major budget cuts. And the first study occurred under the leadership of my predecessor. You may be familiar with that person. This was a report conducted by the external consulting firm Huron, and they were tasked with the charge of looking at, well, given all these UW colleges, 13 campuses spread throughout the state plus UW colleges online, what are some of the options that we have to confront a major budget cut? And then following this external report, my predecessor, President Cross, then Chancellor Cross, commissioned an internal group to look at it. This was called the Repositioning Task Force. They finished their work in early 2014. It was a group made up principally of faculty. It was a group that spent 9 months looking very carefully at this process, also using the input from the Huron report, and they came up with a series of recommendations, a few of which had been implemented in the prior administration. And then we come to the budget cut proposed for 2015-17. I convened another group to look at this. It was a group, again, composed of shared governance representatives as well as additional faculty, staff, students, and administrators. I tasked them with coming up with at least $6 million, $6.5 million in reductions, not knowing what the ultimate size of our cut would be at the time. And we operated under a number of major assumptions. A major assumption was we were not going to close a campus. The UW campuses operate in close partnership with cities and municipalities. They depend on us, they've invested in us, and we were not going to close one of the campuses. The other thing is that we were going to conduct an open and transparent process where we were going to share information with our organization as we worked through our budget reduction strategies. In addition, we did not want to touch our instructional programs. We fulfill a very important academic access mission for the state of Wisconsin. We make a promise to our students and their families when they come to us that they will be able to study, succeed, and transfer on, and that was something that we did not want to put in danger as we went through our budget reduction process. We also did not want to harm our revenue sources, so that was another assumption. And then finally, and perhaps more importantly, with whatever we did, we were going to treat our people, our employees and our staff, with the utmost of compassion and respect as we went through this process. So the final results of all of this was a plan coming out of all these various sources, and recommendations came forward to me, and I decided to go forward with a number of them. And the main response is to consolidate certain administrative functions and to regionalize others. And now I'll turn to Vice Chancellor Wildeck to lead you through some of the more detail of how we went through that implementation planning.
Thank you, Chancellor. Over the next few minutes, I'll take you on a 20,000-foot flyover on the process and some activities that are being undertaken in the UW colleges currently. Like any business that loses 8% of its revenue, we really focused on a few core things. First of all, reducing overhead costs. Secondly, focusing on our core product. And thirdly, strengthening our position in the marketplace. Those are common things that any business would do when losing a significant portion of its revenue. The Chancellor announced a first round of major budget decisions back in the middle of May of this year. The theme of those budget decisions, and if you recall, this is right before the Joint Finance Committee finalized its version of the budget and it went on to the governor. But the theme of the first round of decisions was really around consolidation. And that does not mean just cutting expenses. It also means that we're going to need to reinvest in certain core aspects of the organization. It involved the creation of a one-stop shop model for delivering student services on our campuses to streamline where students receive their support services. And it included things like admissions, veterans counseling, financial aid, and disabilities. It also involved the standardization and the consolidation of the way we do our recruiting in the UW colleges, including the use of technology tools for recruiting and tracking prospects. And thirdly, the organization around the Student Services One-Stop Shop involved a standardization and applying consistency to the way we handle student conduct and compliance issues in the UW colleges. The second area of consolidation in the Round 1 decisions involved the establishment of a Student Academic Success Center on our UW colleges campuses, the consolidation of the way we manage our IT networks, which is very different than 10 years ago when our staffing pattern for managing networks was created. It establishes a single library director for all of UW colleges and allocates in a more consistent manner the staffing that exists on the ground in our libraries to support students. And lastly, it consolidates and standardizes the approach to instructional technology support on our campuses. You'll see at the bottom of that slide, the first round of decisions established a goal of $2.6 million in overall savings. Keep in mind, that's reducing costs in some areas and making reinvestments in other areas where they're needed to establish both the one-stop shop for student services and the Student Academic Success Center. So the first round of decisions established a goal of saving $2.6 million. The time frame around the Round 1 decisions was to plan for implementation throughout the 3 months over the summer, and I'll talk a bit about the process for doing so in a moment, and then deciding to go forward on certain items and actually implementing those decisions throughout the fall semester. And now let's talk for a moment about the Round 2 decisions that were announced by the Chancellor in mid-July, after the budget was signed by the Governor. The theme around Round 2 decisions is really regionalization, although there's some additional consolidation aspects. It's really about regionalization. And in these decisions, we created 4 leadership and management regions within the UW colleges: the North, the Southwest, the Southeast, and the Northeast. We set out a framework for leadership within the regions that involves 7 key leadership positions previously found on each and every campus. In the future will be found within a region. And lastly, there is an element of consolidation, a further consolidation of operations around primarily business services and human resources. And these Round 2 decisions are estimated to reduce costs by approximately $3.9 million. Now, if you're keeping track at home, the round 1 estimates of 2.6 and the round 2 estimates of 3.9 total about $6.5 million. And you saw that the need for the reduction is $5.6 million. That's because we built in a $900,000 contingency, because as these groups that are working on the plans and the implementations do their work, they also have been guided not to implement or plan for any change that presents unacceptable levels of risk to either our students or the success of our campuses and our institution. The 4 regions look like this, and I'll ask the Chancellor to just say a couple of things about the regions.
Well, there are a lot of different ways that you can slice and dice 13 campuses, right? And we put a lot of thought into this. Not only is it geographic proximity, but we thought, how could we take this situation and actually turn it into an opportunity? So in this case, we can look at these regions as distinct. The campuses that have been grouped together, they have similarities, pardon me, and the regions have certain needs. So in addition to administering our campuses on a regional basis, we also have the opportunity to leverage pardon me, our service to the regions.
The campuses and the clusters that you see before you also have an equalization of budget, of enrollment, and other factors, and that was part of our attempt and our logic behind the establishment of the regions. The time frame for round 2 budget decisions is a little bit longer planning phase. We began planning in earnest for the regionalized leadership positions back in July. The planning around the consolidation aspects in business services, human resources, and so on really is starting in earnest this month. The same committee that we charged with planning the round 1 decisions has been charged with round 2 decisions in that area, with the goal of implementing throughout the fall semester, with the recruitment and the selection of our regional leaders going forward, and then the consolidation aspects of business affairs would be implemented largely after January 1st. Our goal for all of this reorganization is to have everything implemented by June 30th of 2016.
So this is a huge change for us. And we will be eliminating 83 positions through this process, and we have committed to our people to, again, treat them with the highest level of respect and consideration. And we're building into our process and our timeline adequate notice period so that people have the opportunity to pursue other opportunities, and we'll help them with that.
The process that we're following, this is such a large undertaking that we're managing the effort as a major IT project. We've established 2 executive sponsors for the overall success of the project. The Chancellor has appointed myself and Provost Greg Lampe as the executive sponsors for the project. We have charged a Budget Implementation Steering Committee, or what we commonly refer to as BISC, to oversee the entire process of planning and implementation of these decisions. And we've appointed, she doesn't appear on the chart here, but we've appointed a project manager, a nearly full-time project manager, to manage the resources, the schedule, the assignments, and the deliverables for the entire work effort. And the Budget Implementation Steering Committee, of which there are about 10 members, have commissioned a series of 27 task groups that is looking into the detail of planning and implementation for all of the round 1 decisions and the round 2 decisions. To date, 27 different task groups are looking at the various slices of this reorganization.
And they are made up of over 140 current employees of the UW colleges that work in these subject matter areas. So we've got the experts right at the table discussing the impacts, planning the organization for the future, and how these things will be carried out. I want to speak just for a moment about the UW College's Central Services Organization, or what's commonly referred to as the Central Office. The Central Office in the UW Colleges is not just an administrative office, but it is a back office consolidated cluster that provides critical back office daily operational activities in a variety of areas, some of which you see on the screen right now. We have about 73 total employees in our central office, of which over 80% of that human resource provides back office operations so that they do not have to be duplicated across each and every UW College's campus. The central office in the UW Colleges really represents the efficiency factor, and it's a significant reason why the UW Colleges has the lowest cost per student in the UW system.
So finally, what are we looking for at the end of the day? Number one, we'll focus on our student success, and we have built-in metrics in terms of all of these areas as we move forward. So student success is one, and that will be measured by our traditional measures of persistence and completion. Local partnerships are especially important, maintaining those. Where they've been very locally focused, now we need to figure out how do we manage that in a regional model. But that will be a focus. And of course, administrative effectiveness will continue to be a focus for us. At the end of the day, remaining focused on the students is the most important thing. And I will say, within the UW colleges, we have a great asset, and that is our mission alignment. Every single person, faculty and staff member there, is completely aligned on students. You don't necessarily see that at other more comprehensive institutions. Our faculty are there to help our students. Our staff are there to help our students succeed. That is a great asset, as I mentioned. We talked a little bit about potential opportunities as we go through this, and of course, when you enter into a major change and a major budget reduction, that's not top of mind. But we do have some opportunities going forward. As Vice Chancellor Wildeck described our various task groups and the process that we used, think about it, a 3-month process to implement the level of detail of change that we're undertaking with our consolidation step in step 1. What we really employed was a lean design process where people who know the tasks and processes were able to redesign every job description and redesign every one of our processes around the student based on current best practices and current technology. I think at the end of the day that is an opportunity. Another opportunity we have is to recruit more non-traditional students into the UW colleges. Right now, our student demographics are approximately 25% of our students are non-traditional. And we know, we just gave you some statistics yesterday in the Education Committee, that roughly 85% of all college and university students in this country are non-traditional. So we have a huge opportunity there by adapting our recruitment techniques to be appropriate for non-traditional students as well as traditional age students. We have a huge effort underway called Curriculum Reimagining, where we're looking at our 2-year liberal arts general education associate's degree curriculum and bringing it into the 21st century by embedding project-based learning and high-impact practices such as they have here at UW-Whitewater, right into our curriculum. And we're working with our other 4-year institutions to ensure that we have the transfer of credit assured as well. We have some opportunities to bring in very innovative grant projects, and in fact, the UW colleges as well as UW Extension have just been awarded a grant project to look at our student records, or the transcript of the future, and how do students provide evidence of learning beyond the traditional transcript. We're part of a national study that's funded by the Lumina Foundation with other institutions, 7 other institutions, including some from University of Maryland and a college or a university out in California you may have heard of called Stanford University. We're in there with them. We have some opportunities for development and fundraising as well. But I want to go back to that issue of mission alignment and the fact that all our faculty and staff are there because of our students. And reflecting again that over the course of this year, we are going to be saying goodbye to about 80 of our administrative colleagues. I want to take a moment to think about them. Many of them, we will help them get other jobs for sure, but if some of them have told us they love our students too, and that's what we will be taken away from them, what they will be missing is their ability to serve the students within the UW colleges. So for a moment I would ask that we all take a moment to recognize these individuals, to thank these individuals, and to honor these individuals. And I assure you that we will honor them by continuing our laser focus on our students, our ability to provide access and opportunity to the citizens of Wisconsin going forward. Thank you, Regent President, for allowing us to give you this update. And we're here for any questions you may have.
Thank you. We have a technical issue. I want you to stay right there because we do have some questions for you. And we're just going to pause for a few minutes while they do an insert of the cable. They have to do an insert of the cable for the microphones. So let's just sit for a minute. Let's relax for about a minute. Let's not have anybody go anywhere because we have questions that we're going to be directing to you. Folks, you can...
Check, check.
Are we all right? Very good. All right. We're back online. Thank you. Questions. And first of all, I want to thank you, Vice Chancellor Wildeck, Chancellor Sandeen. Thank you very much. We have been anticipating this report. I also agree with you about the 80 employees that it's going to be necessary to reposition. So let's not just think about them, let's give them a hand. This is a difficult situation in any case, but it's one that needed to be addressed. Questions? Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Chancellor Sandeen. You know, we heard yesterday about the importance of modernizing the UW colleges and extension for the 21st century. One of my fellow Regent colleagues made a good point of the necessity of that. As you look at the mission adjustments and the alignment that you're going through, do you truly feel like you're heading towards a modernization for the 21st century? That's my first question. And then the second is, with all due sincerity, would you have made some of these changes without the budget experience that we've just, underwent? And to what degree would you have moved forward with some of these changes, if not all of them? And then lastly, I would just say, it's clear to me from both of your comments the focus has been on the student. That is our primary mission, and I congratulate you for that.
Thank you. So addressing your questions, first about will this bring us into the modern age? And I would like to say that we already were in many ways. I respect our faculty so much in terms of their willingness to innovate, So, for example, a couple things that we were doing already in the UW colleges was employing point-to-point video conferencing classroom ability and online classes in order to optimize our academic offerings across the 13 campuses. So an example of that, if in one campus we had a more specialized course that had low student demand, 5 students on a campus who need to take that course. Well, in this day and age, financially, it's very difficult to justify that we would have one professor teaching 5 students. So what we do is find other students on other campuses who need to take that course as well, and perhaps teach it in a video conference format. So one professor on one campus with 5 students in the classroom, and that is sent out to other campuses, and other students can participate. In addition, students have the opportunity to take fully online courses in that situation as well. So for many, many years, the UW colleges has been on the forefront of thinking, how do we incorporate technology and newer educational formats in terms of serving our students across the system. You may also be aware that the UW Colleges is collaborating with UW Flexible Option and offers the full Associate of Arts degree in the flex format. So we have always been kind of under the radar, but very innovative in terms of what we try to do and how we try to operate on the academic side. So I would say that what we're doing is consolidating, modernizing our administrative structure. You also asked me, Regent Peterson, whether we would have implemented some of these changes regardless of the budget cut. And the answer to that is probably yes. So, for example, those consolidated services where we're looking at the one-stop shop for student services, and then the academic one-stop shop that consolidates library and IT and student success centers, those are really national best practices for student services. And I think from that standpoint, we really would have looked seriously at implementing something like that. Anything
All
to
right,
add?
we have Regent Higgins and then Regent.
Chancellor Sandine, earlier in your presentation, you acknowledged the fact that the UW colleges are unique in their collaboration with local communities, in that the facilities are owned by counties in which they reside. And I personally know that the relationship between our academic people at the colleges and the county supervisors who run those county boards is very important to the smooth functioning of the institutions. How have you considered maintaining those relationships when you've kind of removed the chief point person at each of the campuses?
Thank you, Regent Higgins. We identified that as a big risk early on in this process. That is, we needed to maintain those relationships that are already very close. So we have been in constant communication with our county and municipal partners along the way, making sure they knew what we were planning, getting their input. So they have been really part of the conversation, and Vice Chancellor Wildeck has really been managing that because he has long-standing relationships. Would you like to address that a bit?
Sure. And Regent Higgins, the traditional role of the campus dean in the colleges is not just executive officer externally, but chief operating officer internally. This transition will emphasize the external portion of that responsibility, because a regional dean in the future will have responsibility for 3 campuses and in one case 4 campuses. On the campus then there will be an associate dean for either academic affairs, business affairs, or student affairs for the region that also acts as the operating officer for that particular campus and the campus administrator. So in that regard there's kind of double coverage to make sure that we preserve and maintain those strong local relationships.
Just to dovetail on what Vice Chancellor Wildeck said, the job description for the regional executive will be really different than what it is as a campus executive. And the relationship building and maintenance, both internally and externally, will be a much larger proportion of the job for those individuals going forward.
All right, I believe that answered Regent Whitburn's questions. Regent Pruitt.
Thank you. Chancellor Steve, what would you say to those who would look at this and contend, see, we told you all along they had too much money. You know, we cut them $5.6 million. They're doing this. Everything's going to be fine. So my question is really twofold, assuming that you would maybe answer affirmatively and give them support to that statement. I'm wondering, first of all, what keeps you up at night in terms of what might be lost as a result of this? And second, and I assume I know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear from you, I assume if had you moved forward with some of these administrative changes and improvements, you might have redirected some of that money to help compensate faculty who I believe are well below their peers in terms of compensation, and potentially, had it not come in the form of a budget cut, while some of these changes might have occurred, the redistribution might have benefited the students and faculty and staff at the institution. I'm wondering if you could comment about either of those two things.
Sure. First of all, in terms of, see, we can handle it. We walk a very fine line, don't we? Because on one hand, we have the legal obligation to operate within the budget that we're provided. And we need to do that in the best possible way to fulfill our mission. So that's what I'm hired to do. And so that's how we work going forward. And we have to remember that we still need to serve our students. We still need to attract students in the future. I will say, if confronted with a budget cut anywhere near what we endured in this biennium, you can see that we are well into the bone at this point. We've been very creative in how we deal with it, but it would be very, very difficult going forward. I'm also glad that you pointed out the salary and compensation issues within our institutions. A study that was conducted, again by my predecessor, revealed that our faculty are 15 to 20% below their peers. We do know that we lose faculty occasionally because of compensation. Many times they're hired by the technical college across the parking lot, and upon joining their faculty, get an automatic increase of 20%. So this is very much of an issue. We have allocated a significant portion of base funding, $600,000, over the next 2 years to help correct that. That's something that was a decision that was made prior to my coming on board, and that I fully support, because we have to make progress in correcting some of these salary discrepancies between our faculty and staff, frankly, and our peer institutions.
I'm going to have to I want to thank you very much for your presentation. We've been anticipating this, and we very much appreciate it, because this is something that this is an important change that's going on in colleges. And in addition, faced with the challenging budget of our environment, all of our chancellors are faced with making some very significant and difficult decisions that will impact lives at their campus. We appreciate the extensive and the inclusive review process that you have made along with your colleagues at UW colleges, and we are very much appreciated how you got to these decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, I'll ask Chancellor Sandeen to stay at the table, because we're going to get an update on the UW Flex option. But also, I'm going to do a little time management here. We are faced with a hard, what's that called? A hard close? What's it called?
Hard stop.
Hard stop, thank you. We're faced with a hard stop here for a campus celebration, and we do not want to lose this. So, can you do this in about 10 minutes?
Sure.
All right. Very good.
Okay, and again, I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues here. We have Vice Chancellor and Provost Aaron Brower and Dean David Scable, who is Dean of the UW Extension Division of Continuing Education Outreach and E-Learning. And I have a quick presentation to sort of frame the idea or the whole topic, and then we'll move on to Q&A. So let me go through this pretty quickly. So first, an overview. We're going to talk a little bit about what it is, since we last met, where we are in terms of revenue, and what we have learned along the way, and what we are thinking about moving into the future. So why flex? Again, there's a huge need in this country and in the state in terms of greater degree attainment. Right now we're at about 40%. We anticipate needing it being at 60% in the country and in the state in terms of individuals with degrees, 2-year degrees or higher. We need a more knowledgeable workforce. All of our industries are changing and requiring a high level of knowledge of their workers. We talked about the large non-traditional demographic. In the state and country, roughly 80% of all students are not the traditional first-time, full-time right out of college or right out of high school, and we need to figure out new ways to serve them in a flexible way. And here's another issue that may not have been brought up to you before, the credit transfer problem. When we're dealing with adult working professional students who have attended multiple institutions, they have credit from those various institutions. It's very difficult for them to obtain credit for what they've already learned at other institutions. The flexible format where they are working through competencies and taking assessments allows them to leapfrog that credit transfer problem by gaining credit along the way for what they've already learned or what they already know or can do. When we design flex programs, we look at what is the demand out there. What you're looking at on this chart are the top 5 job openings by required degrees. And you can see the areas of business administration, computer science, and so forth. And if you look at the degrees and programs that we're designing, we're really doing it with this sort of demand and need in mind. And so now a little video that will talk about how we design how the UW Flex option works. It's only a minute or so long.
Imagine earning a University of Wisconsin degree on your own schedule, when and where it's convenient for you, while enjoying a personalized education tailored to fit your knowledge, needs, and goals. Imagine being able to learn at your own pace, test when you are ready, and get credit for what you already know. Now it's an option. Introducing the UW Flexible Option, a more personalized, convenient, and affordable way to earn a respected degree. A partnership between University of Wisconsin System campuses and UW Extension, the Flexible Option awards credit based on how well you know the material, not how many hours you spend in class. That means you can work toward a degree at a pace you decide. Best of all, the Flexible Option earns you a degree that employers value. These are University of Wisconsin degrees, made to fit your schedule.
So we've spent this year proving the concept, and what have we learned? Well, we're leveraging partnerships and building new operations. We need to rebuild all of our back office systems because we're no longer based on the credit hour that's been the building block of those systems. We're seeing good student outcomes and progress, and most importantly, very strong enrollments. So let's give you an example of the enrollments. Last year, 193 enrollments. This year to date, 692 enrollments. So we're seeing good growth in our enrollment very early on in the establishment of this brand new program. Our top 2 programs in terms of enrollments are the RN to BSN program and the Information Science and Technology program, both in partnership with University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. We've had our first graduates, including Lori Kenyon, who completed the RN to BSN program in less than a year. If she had enrolled in a traditional program, it would have taken her 2 years to complete this program. And she's also a UW Health employee, so that's great. In terms of our program revenue, we're also seeing great growth, starting with last year, and here we are this year at over $1 million. Let me go back to that. That was a little too fast. We want to pound this home. So you may say, okay, great, you have revenue, but what about expenses? You realize this was an investment. We are building a brand new program from scratch, and we were given one-time startup funds from the system to do so. What you're looking at here is the break-even point of one of our programs, the Information Science and Technology degree, and we project that given our enrollment patterns, our revenues will exceed expenses within about a year. And we have a similar pattern for the RN to BSN program. Again, the startup costs are pretty significant in the beginning, but as we add more and more students and get more and more programs online, our financial picture meets our goals. Some of our challenges, well, program array, financial aid and regulation. So let's look at program array. We have a number of programs already in partnership with 3 of our institutions, and what we're looking at is, there we go, adding others, one with UW-Madison. We just got this one approved today, the new master's program in GIS with UW-Stevens Point, and then we're looking to add, as you know, a new business and management bachelor's program. We are meeting a lot of our challenges in terms of financial aid and other regulations. We received a successful review from the HLC. We have been awarding financial aid. We're one of the first institutions that have been allowed by the U.S. Department of Education to do so, Title IV regular financial aid for this flexible program, and we were selected to be an experimental site. And we're making progress on developing our various back office systems to adapt to the new flex format. What have we learned? Well, it's working like it should. We're attracting students, we're meeting demand, students are learning, students are graduating. We are bringing new students to the UW system. That second point is probably very important. We checked with our partners at UW-Milwaukee in the nursing program and the IT program. Their enrollments are increasing as well. So we do not believe we are cannibalizing students from our traditional programs. We are bringing in a whole new group of students. We're learning that some of our traditional policies don't translate to competency-based education, and we are doing some weird things here. Let's see. Yeah, something's up there. But we'll just keep going along. And we've learned that there is continually increased demand and that some programs are performing better than others. That doesn't bother us too much. In our world, that's very common, that we would be reviewing our programs and constantly refining them. If we could change the slide, please. All right, looking forward, what are we looking for? Click. We're building this. We'll be refining our existing programs. Next, implementing new programs. We have some potential to sell directly to businesses who have a need to increase the educational attainment of their employees by working directly with them. And then finally, if you could click the next one, please. Demand continues to grow, and how do we deal with that? How do we help students as they intake? So I'll stop there. We'll go to the next slide, and I'll invite questions and my colleagues to help answer those questions. Thank you. A little rushed, but I think we got everything in there.
That was very well done. Very well done. And if we were active listeners, actually, it went very well. I do have a comment, and a comment, more of a comment than a question. Our challenge is a competition with for-profit institutions, and clearly the advantage of the flex degree is that we can tap into that market. It appears that the fear of cannibalization is not happening based on some of your programs that you already have. So I want to applaud you for that. Applaud you for bringing in new students. We have enough time for about 2 questions. Do we have? Yes. Regent Pruitt?
And I should have asked this when the Education Committee report was made, but I sense, related to the flex option and the revised mission statement and the two-part process that's going on, I sense there's some concern by some chancellors about the effect of that on their offerings and their institutions. And I'm just wondering, is there going to be an opportunity for the chancellors of other institutions to be heard about this before the board, prior to the board making a decision on that? I know it's sort of a bridge between education and this, but since you mentioned it, I thought I'd ask.
I believe in terms of the mission change, you're talking about the mission change in particular. Correct. Yes, there's going to be a public hearing, then it will come again before the board. So I, too, hope that there's an opportunity for others, to provide their input.
Thank you.
Regent Evers?
Thank you. And this is maybe an unanswerable question, but what is the prevalence of credit based on experience with the students at the 700 students?
So all students, one of the advantages of Flex is it elegantly gets through a lot of the complications that might have been with other kinds of programs, PLA or other kinds of review of portfolios. So all of our students have to pass the same assessments in order to move forward, whether they have experience or not.
Just a quick one with the circles, and I appreciate the graphics in your pamphlet. The out-of-state students, are we charging more from them?
We are not. There's a flat rate for undergraduate students, and when we bring on the graduate program, there will be a flat rate for them as well.
You're going to hear it from me.
But let me remind you, before you even ask your question, I can anticipate, Regent Farrow. Currently, 75% of students enrolled in this program are Wisconsin residents.
It was a big circle. I thought it was close to that. But I just think that, again, with our taxpayers supporting not as much as they used to, heaven knows, and this being seen as a public system, I think other states shouldn't be getting away with what we're doing. They ought to pay for it. In a different way, some way that represents the fact that it's our investment as a system.
Correct. And we definitely will consider that, and to point out that the state funds are the investment in the startup. Going forward, this is a cost recovery program. So all of the tuition funds the operations of the program going forward.
The only thing I answer, and not to, the way the university budgets are done, the buildings and their maintenance and operation and costs aren't always considered as part of what it takes to educate a student. In this case, you do have a building, and it's here in Wisconsin.
Fair enough.
I'm just hard-nosed about it. Thank you.
One more question.
Thank you. Quickly, the flexible option program allows our students the time needed to complete a degree, but I wonder if you've had any dropouts.
Sure, there is attrition. It's really early still to tell, because actually the students behave exactly how you would expect adults to behave, which is that they subscribe for 3 months at a time, and they can consume as much education as they want during that period. But many find that very useful, because then they can take a month off or even 2 months and then come back. So what we're seeing is that we have some students who persist from one subscription period to the next without a break. Most actually come in and out because they plan vacations, job changes, what have you.
That's a good question. Thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation on a short time frame, so thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
I call upon Regent Hersey, who is one of the Board of Regents liaison to UW-Whitewater, to read a resolution to thank UW-Whitewater for hosting our September meeting.
Whereas the members of the Board of Regents are pleased to recognize the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater as the host campus for the Board's September 2015 meeting, and whereas the Board is grateful for the generous hospitality extended this month by the entire Warhawk community and the campus's new leader, Beverly Copper, who will be inaugurated this afternoon as UW-Whitewater's 16th Chancellor, and whereas the Board was inspired by Chancellor Copper's presentation, The Warhawk Way, fostering excellence through engagement, leadership, and service. And whereas the Business and Finance Committee appreciated hearing about UW-Whitewater's plans for management and the impact of the state budget reduction, and the READY Committee was enthusiastic about the campus's many entrepreneurial initiatives, including the Innovation Center and the Launchpad program. And whereas UW-Whitewater has offered the Capital Planning Committee a helpful review of the university's comprehensive master plan aimed at building student success. And whereas the members of the Education Committee thank Interim Provost and Vice Chancellor John Stone for the presentation about UW-Whitewater's high-impact educational practices. And whereas the board was delighted to hear from UW-Whitewater's mother-son duo, featured in this month's Student Spotlight, Rochelle Day, who earned a Bachelor of Business Administration degree from UW-Whitewater as a non-traditional student and now works on campus, and her son Josh Day, who is entering his senior year at UW-Whitewater. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents hereby thanks UW-Whitewater for this month's informative presentations, its innovative spirit, and its many continued contributions to UW's system and the state of Wisconsin.
Are there any other communications, petitions, or memorials from the Regents?